those groups of 15 we're allowed to have.
Michael, this is Catherine. I can start and then turn it over to Caitlin Molina from DHS if I miss anything. We specifically did not identify numbers of groups that you could have, knowing that all of you have different facilities and capacities and whatnot. The underwriting kind of guidance for how many groups is you need to make sure that when you are outside, that the groups of kids have distance between them and are not interacting. So there's a little bit of a risk on your end of what, it can't be any less than 14 feet. In my mind, I was a, 4th and 5th grade classroom teacher. I probably would want to budget at least 20 feet between, knowing that kids are gonna kind of play with that buffer zone a little bit. But operationalizing it, it's really whatever you all feel will be able to ensure that those stable groups stay stable and aren't interacting with one another. Caitlin, would you add anything to that?
Hi, this is Caitlin Molina from DHS. I just want to thank everyone for making time today and for welcoming us on the call. I would just say that you probably want, depending upon what your plans are for inclement weather and supporting programming, you probably want to prepare stable groups for your indoor space, only because if you're outdoor programming, you would want to be able to have the indoor space to accommodate those stable groups with the partitions, unless your plan is to send kiddos home in inclement weather.
Yeah, so the outdoor, I understand outdoors because that's, you get all the space, and people have bigger spaces, especially outside. But now if you go indoors, you got to have that 14 feet or up to the 20 feet you're saying, because kids are going to move. And I know you have to put a petition in, which is almost impossible to put a petition in on the gym floor.
So yeah, I wouldn't suggest a partition. I think that you could do cones, like something to indicate visually to children that they need to separate between the groups.
Yeah, but your report, but the guidelines that came out said it has to be a petition. So I believe
it said, or a physical structure.
Yeah, so, and it has to be higher than the kids and it can't be knocked down, so it has to be screwed into the ground. So, if you're allowing us to put cones, that's a major, major difference than putting up a petition.
So yes, it needs to be 4 feet tall, or provide some opportunity to separate the stable groups. So yes, if that is providing you all with further clarification, yes, that is accurate.
Okay, yeah, because that's the difficult part, to be able to, separate these facilities and then not have kids walk through those facilities to get to other parts of the building where they could be, separated.
Yeah, I understand. I think that we wanted to provide opportunities for you all to continue to deliver programming, recognizing that you probably are not going to be able to serve the same number that you served last year. I think that the protocols around limiting traffic in the corridors is important. And so if you want to think about a system in which groups are taking turns so that there's not commingling of stable groups, whether it be shifts for bathroom use, I understand that this is going to feel somewhat inconvenient, but it's really important to us that we maintain safety for children so that they can continue to receive programming, but do so in an environment that's conducive to the requirements under COVID-19.
Yeah,
I appreciate that this is challenging.
I know normal days, you could accommodate that. You can be able to separate. You can say, okay, kids are coming in at certain times. But once you have inclement weather, the kids are going to be inside all day, possibly. And that's where the difficult part's going to come into play, is how you're going to be able to manage that in inclement weather.
Yeah, and we'd be more than happy to support an additional call with you all to think through how you all could do this in a way that makes sense. I would just also say that the hope is that if a child or a staff member became COVID positive, that because you've operated the stable groups, everything is individualized and needs to be reviewed by Department of Health if there is a COVID positive case. But the reason why we're issuing guidance around separation of the stable groups is because our hope is that if there's a COVID positive kid in one group, that you would still be able to continue to operate your programs, but you would quarantine that one group. So there's rationale behind the stable groups and separating of groups. It's really to protect the organization and the program from being able to continue delivering services. But I recognize that for a lot of, particularly around the drop-off pickup protocols, this is new terrain for all of you. And so if there is an opportunity, we actually have a group of consultants that are supporting us in technical assistance, because there may be everyone is going to have an individualized floor plan that needs individualized attention to think through like how you would operationalize this. I'm really grateful that these questions are coming up. I think I would encourage you to email the dhs.summercamps@dhs.rhodeisland.gov email box. We have time to help you think through this. So we have a few weeks. I think that there's ways to do this. I also think I would encourage you all, and this is what we've seen in childcare, it could be that you start smaller. You do a cohort of smaller groups of stable groups in the beginning, and then you kind of get your arms wrapped around the operations of how to implement these systems. And then you expand your services over time throughout the summer once you get a good sense of the day-to-day. It is brand new. It's going to be brand new for families as well as staff and for administrators. And so I think if you can viably do that economically, to start smaller and then ramp up over time, you may feel more stability and security in the protocols and your ability to adhere to them.
Hi, this is Jean and Lois from North Providence. We would like to know, we understand we have to submit a plan. How long is the turnover time going to be for you guys to approve?
Yeah, so we're in the process of putting it up online. The actual plan itself and what will consist of the plan is on reopeningrhodeisland.com. So while we're not currently accepting the plans, you can look at it and see. It's really just an attestation or a checklist. So depending upon the level of support you all need, if you feel confident in your plan and you click submit, we can get those back to you within 3 business days. So we're asking that folks, submit those plans by the 26th so that we have a few days to review them and approve them. But if you're actually looking for support in developing plans or, thinking through the operations, that would take more time. So I would encourage you all to review the checklist and the attestation that's on reopeningrhodeisland.com, and then send an email to summercamps.ri.gov to kind of get clarity on what we could do to support you all. I need to look back at the regs. My sense is that for indoor space, yes, large cones dividing the groups indoors would be substantial as long as the groups are 14 feet apart. That would be the same for if you wanted to, I think some gymnasiums have netting that go down that can separate groups. That would be appropriate. The intent is just to provide as much space between groups as you possibly can. I will say that every day CDC guidelines comes out with new updated guidelines. It is always suggested that you deliver the programming outdoors as much as possible. If we can have kids outdoors, we should. The separation of stable groups indoors should really be reserved for inclement weather, or if there's programming that just cannot be delivered outdoors, or if you don't have the space to do that.
Excuse me, Caitlin? Hello?
Yeah.
Hi, this is Diane Sullivan from East Providence Recreation. Will there be a template as to submitting our plans, or are we, doing our own thing and checking?
Sure. You know what? Right. If you want to make me the host, I can actually pull up the application that's on Reopening Rhode Island.
Oh, the application is up?
It's up there. Yep. It might be helpful if we just pull it up so you all can see. It really is asking each of you to attest to your understanding of the components, but is not necessarily requiring you all to send. Let's see if I'm the host now. I am. So what I'm going to do now is share screen. Okay, so here it is. And you only need to submit this plan online. I should note that this is not actually, this is the actual plan, but we're actually putting it up as an online registry. So that should go live within the next few days. But you only need to submit this if you are planning to serve more than 50 children cumulatively throughout the summer. So if you are serving 10 kids, you do not need to submit this plan. It is still advised that you complete the plan because it would maintain health and safety for children. but we are only receiving plans for those that intend to serve more than 50 children. This letter indicates what is required as part of the plan. It will be on an online portal. It will also ask that you attest that your administrators have completed health and safety trainings and webinars. Just gonna move because my husband's yelling on his own call. So we are also developing a webinar that will produce health and safety topics for you as administrators. We'll develop that webinar so that it can also be used for your staff. So if you wanted to convene staff a week in advance of opening, you could facilitate the online webinar and to make sure that they are understanding of the regulations and guidelines as well. We will send an email out to this group once that webinar is developed. We already developed it for childcare, so there's a good blueprint. The health and safety standards under CDC and all of the regulatory requirements. We did develop in a webinar in English and Spanish for childcare programs. It was well received. My plan is to do that same format for you all and then to offer some TA sessions so that if you need help in completing your plan, we can do that. As I scroll down, you will see here is the email address that I mentioned to you all, dhs.summercamps. As much as we try and issue broad guidance, you all have very individual programs. And so if there are individual questions that need to get answered, I would encourage you all to email that email box. And then here's the actual plan. So it's very simple. It's asking for your name, your contact, email address. So you will receive email confirmation within 3 business days once the plan has been approved. It'll ask if it's part of a larger umbrella agency, and if so, what the name of that headquarters is. It'll ask you if you're receiving 21st century funds. The purpose of this is we will want to coordinate with Rhode Island Department of Education around the administration. It'll also ask if you're accepting CCAP. That is our child care assistance program. As a reminder, if you are accepting CCAP, you must be licensed. That's a federal requirement, unfortunately. It asks for the physical address, the mailing address, and then your schedule of operation, when the camp starts and when it ends, and any blackout days where you may be closed. So maybe July 4th week, I'm not sure what program operations look like. It'll also ask for the total number of children served and kind of age brackets. If you have rolling enrollment, you want to put in what your intention is, not what your anticipated enrollment would be, not your confirmed enrollment. And then there will be an expectation that you maintain child files at your program so that if and when there is a COVID positive case and we need to do contact tracing, or when DHS were to come visit your program, you have all of that information on file. It'll also ask how many sessions or cohorts you will deliver throughout the year. So if you do a 2-week basketball camp, you would maybe offer, I don't know, 4 sessions of that. I'm making this up. As you can tell, I'm not a basketball camp expert. The number of stable groups per session. So for one session, if you have a 2-week basketball camp, how many groups will there be in that session? Assuming and understanding that there needs to be physical distance between those groups and a plan for inclement weather. This is just a checklist, so you will not need to submit supporting documentation upon receipt of your plan, but should and when DHS come to visit your program, you should have all of those things on file. We are really taking this as a collaborative and partnership. This is the first year summer camps has actually come under my purview. I anticipate learning a ton from you all over this season, and so we are really asking for what is basic expectation so that if there's a COVID positive case, we can do contract tracing. So as you're going through this checklist, I anticipate you all may have questions around what would constitute a viable plan or a viable, child file. Please feel free to reach out. I would encourage you to hold off until we do the webinar, only because a lot of your questions will probably be resolved through that webinar. But I also want to just raise that, as long as your intentions are good and you are maintaining documentation of the children you are serving and their contact information, it is my intent to support you all in offering programming. I do not want to make this more challenging. The intent is to do this in a supportive way so that you all feel like you have the resources and the ability to serve children this summer. So all of these things are either documents that we are in the process of developing. You will not need to create forms. My hope is to have standard state-issued forms that you can just adopt for your organization. So for example, a child illness policy. I know that this is new for you all. My sense is that we will produce what is a typical child illness policy that would meet federal and state standards for childcare. You all can just adopt that child illness policy. Drop off and pick up protocols. We have a screening form that you all can use that will, and what we do in our state offices, we actually laminate it as a poster, and we have families verbally attest that there's no cold symptoms and that they haven't been in contact with COVID. Once you pass, you get a sticker. It's like a nightclub. You come in, and then you know that you've passed. Hand washing guidelines and plan for gross motor play. That is pretty typical for most of you all. That is something that is already inherent in what you probably post when you solicit enrollments from families. A camper file. So basically you just want documentation on every child that you're serving. You're gonna wanna know their parent's name, the contact information if there's an emergency. You know, best practice, but not required, is to think about obtaining allergies or if there's any other underlying health conditions. Again, it's not a requirement, but it'll be included in our webinar as something that will be helpful. A cleaning schedule. Most of you probably have this if you have professional janitorial services on site, but some indication that the bathrooms are being routinely cleaned, that, okay. I'm also DJing cartoons over here for my little ones. So visitor forms, we're gonna provide you with a sample. So all of these things are either developed or will be in development so that you all can reference them. And then you're certifying that you've completed the plan and that it's posted in a visible place for families and that you agree to comply with all the guidelines and regulations. So again, even that last bullet or the second to last bullet talking about that you've completed the health and safety webinar, that is developed and administered by DHS. And then you all can support your own staff in accessing that webinar to complete it. You'll print, you'll give your title just so we know that it's not one of your 15-year-old campers doing it. And then there will be a signature and we will respond within 3 business days. If we don't, then you send me an email and then I gently remind my staff that they need to respond. Again, more than welcome to answer any questions related to this application process. Our intent here was to just require the bare minimum. I know this feels like a lot, but we went through several iterations to make sure that we were not holding you all up to an extraordinarily high standard, given that this is the first time that we've done it, but we also wanted to be mindful that we were supporting you all in the development of really safe plans. So I'm just gonna pause there and see if there's any questions. Let me pull up the screening form too. There's actually a newer version that's going to get posted today, but this is basically what you'll laminate and have families and staff attest to before they enter the facility. At this time, there's no expectation to do temperature checks. Some childcare providers have opted to do that. So they have forehead thermometers. They're actually doing their own temperature checks before kids come in. That's not an expectation or a requirement of you all, but you can certainly do that. And again, this is being used in nursing homes, in our state offices. We've really tried to generalize it so that everyone is using the same one. Attorney General's office is using it, everyone's using it. So my sense is that families may be actually familiar already with the form. The expectation is not for you to be passing out papers as they come in. You can have it laminated, as I said, or you can just verbally have them attest and read through the boxes and then give them a sticker or a stamp and you're good to go in. Again, with the enhanced drop-off pickup protocols, the expectation, and I know this is hard, is that families wouldn't actually enter the building. They would just drop their children off. So, you know, you would just stagger drop-off times, or you would set it up in a way similar to the supermarket where you have 6 feet apart between those individuals as they're dropping off, and then you would coordinate similarly for pickup.
Caitlin, again, it's Jeannie and Lois from North Providence. Actually, that is the way we do our pick up and drop off. The parents never get out of the car. So with that being said, do we not have to do the screening? Like they never enter the building, they never, go ahead.
They have to do the screening on behalf of their children.
Okay.
I know this firsthand. I mean, before COVID, my toddler used to go to childcare with a fever all the time. So you want to do the screening in the car on behalf of the child so that they attest that the child has no cold symptoms. If the
Okay.
parent is not coming in, they don't need to do it. Staff need to do it too, which is important. So your staff need to attest
Mm-hmm.
that there's no issues.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. I'm
Caitlin-
open to feedback. If any of this feels completely unreasonable, like I would love that feedback. I can't necessarily modify it for this summer, but I would love to hear. We did a lot of stakeholder groups that Ray was a part of and felt like this was a reasonable and supportive lift for you all. But if there's more specific feedback, I'm also open to hearing that.
Caitlin, this is Mike from Cumberland again. Do you have, with the cleaning, you mentioned a professional cleaning service. Is that going to be recommended to have a professional cleaning service come in and clean the building? And is that going to have to be cleaned also at the end of the night, completely clean for the next day? I'm just trying to figure out that aspect of the whole thing too.
Yeah, professional cleaning services are not required. And it's not even particularly recommended as long as you're able to adhere to the CDC guidelines. We've actually linked to those in the guidance so that you can review them. It's using cleaning products and cleaning thoroughly in between stable groups. So any shared equipment or material needs to be completely sterilized in between group use, and deep cleanings every night. It's pretty consistent with if you operate a childcare program, with what childcare programs already do in terms of cleaning and sanitizing. This may be newer for your facilities, but yes, every night, deep clean, and then cleaning materials in between stable group use. So for example, if a group is coming in to use a basketball court, before the next group comes in, you would completely sterilize the basketball, whatever they touched in between those things, so that they're sterile. I can probably pull up the cleaning guidance.
Yeah, my question, I mean, not a question, my only concern is you can't have a 16-year-old kid responsible for cleaning that, because I think that would be a liability on the cities and towns spot, having a 16-year-old kid thoroughly clean playgrounds and stuff of that nature, because most of the kids can't even take care of themselves, never mind cleaning facilities properly. So I just think that's going to be
that's valid.
I mean, I think that's going to be a liability on the cities and towns if we don't have somebody qualified to clean, because if something ever happens at your camp and they turn around and any good lawyer is going to sue the cities and towns and everybody else involved in it, recreation directors, if we put it out the state and everybody else, if you don't have, and that would be an easy win, I would think, on their part, if we don't have a professional cleaning service. If you just had a regular 16, 17-year-old child cleaning that, I think that would be a no-brainer in a lawsuit.
I think that's up to you all. I agree that there may be assumed liability in that. We have not issued firm guidance. It is not recommended or required that you use a professional cleaning service. I would say anecdotally across our childcare programs, which have even higher standards for health and safety regarding cleaning, it's a mix. It's about 50-50. Those who have professional cleaning services come in, and those who do that internally on their own.
This is Catherine. Just one thing to add to this, and you guys are thinking through how to operationalize this. One thing I think Caitlin and I have, as well as Cindy, have talked about is when you are in between sessions, if you're having kids in the same group, you want to have consistent cleaning, but it's really important that after that 2-week session where the same group has been in the same classroom, that you can ensure that there's good cleaning then, so that then the next group that comes in, we can assume that they are starting from a baseline of 0, not anything that they might have caught because of the session right before it. So just as you're thinking this through, I would just add that level of potentially wanting an extra level of security or cleaning in between the sessions to ensure that there isn't cross-contamination between them. But again, it doesn't have to be a professional cleaning. That's up to kind of your discretion a little bit.
We had a question about do they have to come up with a plan for each individual specialty camps if their camps are of sizable, if there's enough kids at each camp?
Yeah, I just responded to that. My hope is that you all could just submit one plan. If you've attested that your staff have completed the webinar and you have plans in place for a child illness, that would be relevant to all of your specialized camps. So there's no need to individually submit applications for each programming type.
I had a question. When's the webinar supposed to be?
We have to develop it first. So I'm hoping to have it scheduled next week.
Because
But we will
mean,
record it though. So it's not like you have to watch it live. So this was something we learned with childcare. Everyone wanted the live show. It was like an in-sync concert. So we like filled to capacity within 20 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to record it in English and Spanish so it can be accessible to you all, so you don't have to get it right then and there. You guys can just go to the website. It'll be posted on the Reopening Rhode Island website as well as the DHS website. We are getting a draft of the webinar tomorrow. My hope is to finalize it and put it up live next week. But again, there's no expectation that you complete it live. You can absolutely, watch it once it's recorded.
Yeah, my concern is, we got to make a decision on summer camp ASAP. It takes more than 2 days to plan a summer camp. Getting the facilities, getting your counselors, getting them trained, lining up, cleaning supplies, which could be very difficult, and all that other stuff. So I got to make a decision within the next couple of days if we're going to have summer camp or not. And I'm not even, as of right now, I'm going to talk after with some of the other directors, see what their take is on this. But the price jump for me is going to be it's going to double up in my price going forward. So, but we got to make that decision this week because I got people calling. So we got to have it out there if we're having summer camp or we're not. I can't wait till next week, and then after that to have a decision. I got to decide this week. I'm
so
sure most people are
I can appreciate. Yeah, I can appreciate that. So the webinar will really just be a deeper dive into the guidance. I think that if you're comfortable or uncomfortable with the guidance and the regulations, that should be your North Star for determining whether or not you want to offer summer camp. In terms of funding, I will say that we are working on a plan to administer some funding or at least provide an application so that cities, rec camps, and parks can actually apply for some funding to deliver the enhanced protocols around summer camp programming. And so the details of that will be forthcoming. But I will say that it's on our radar and that we've earmarked additional funds through stimulus dollars to support cities and towns in implementing the enhanced protocols.
That's great because I did hear the governor say that before, but that has to be told to us, today, before we make that decision for running camp, because most cities and towns are scrambling for money right now because of all the cuts and everything else they're having. So there's going to be a big difference if I'm going to get money or I'm not getting money to have camp or not. If we get money, then that gives us a possibility of having camp. If we're not getting money, then we're probably not going to be able to have camp because we can't afford it. Like I said, I charged $375 last year for the summer camp, and right now with the restrictions and everything else, with the councils more I need and everything else, I'm up to between $700 and $800 per a camper. So my price jumped.
So I think that's exactly the type of budget that we'll be requesting. So we'll want to know what your costs were pre-COVID, and then we'll want to know what your newly proposed rates are now that you have the enhanced cleaning protocols and the other regulatory requirements. And then the state is working through what we can afford in compensation to support the differential. And so yes, today is confirmation that there is going to be funding available. People will have to submit applications in order to get funding, but the intention here, and Catherine can speak to this more specifically, is we want to make it as easy as possible for programs to deliver quality programming this summer. And so funding is one way that we can ensure that you all are able to do that. And so yes, the governor said that there'd be funding available. I am reiterating there will be funding available. We are working through the details of that.
Yeah, and I will just add, we are very aware and cognizant of the timing for all of you, and probably even our awareness is probably limited by the pressures you are all under, and cognizant of that. On our end, just so that you are aware, there are certain levels of kind of checks we need when we're using federal dollars that are required on our end before we can put it out. We have gotten kind of a very preliminary green light to move things forward and should have something within the week, but that is one of the things that's just being delayed is some of the federal requirements that we need to ensure all of our CARES money is spending. Just to reiterate what Caitlin said, the governor has given an okay for us to have money available. It's just working on finalizing what that application and what documentation we're going to need from you all to be able to apply for that. And we'll make sure that Ray, I think you have the distribution list. As soon as that goes live, I will make sure that you have access to that to disseminate to the group.
Hey guys, Andy Wade here in Jamestown. Can you hear me? We're good. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you very much for your time and efforts putting all this together.
It's supposed to be, I mean, I call it, it's supposed to be.
Very reasonable. It's very reasonable for us to employ, and I think we're looking forward to working with you this summer.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You wouldn't believe Catherine and I are so tired. We're working so hard to help all of you deliver summer programming. I know that it is always going to feel like it's not enough because it isn't, but like we are doing everything we can to get you all in a good place to deliver programming. We also are really wanting you to be able to do it safely and to feel supported by the state. So again, really appreciate the kind words. We are working 20 hours a day to make this a reality. And so if there are other things that we can do to make this a support, we are more than willing to hear that feedback.
Yeah, and I want to say that I think that your approach to it for trying to provide something that is achievable is well received, and something that I kind of took to heart a few weeks ago. I shifted from the original, the origin of COVID coming down on all of us, and it's like, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do that. What we need to do as recreators, and I'm going to speak to everyone here, is that we need to stop looking at what is being put in front of us as what we can't do, but let's take this information and choose what can we do. We're all creative individuals. We all have brilliant minds in our own way inside this field, and now it's time to employ that and say, all right, given this new framework of how we have to try to operate, this is what we can do. And the children that we serve, they're waiting on us to do this. So yes, the timing is going to be a little more pressure in terms of how we can put something together. But I guarantee you, after the last 2 months, and it's going to be 3 months by the time that our summer camps open, parents are going to be willing to operate on a short time frame to sign up for our programs when we are able to release the details to them about how we're going to safely operate summer camp. So where, yes, in a normal season, geez, we have to wait until June 15th to announce our summer camp that's going to start on June 29th. It's okay. It's okay this year because everyone has been trained to sit and wait and be ready to react when things are ready to open. And so I think that we have to have confidence that we're going to be able to have the time to put it together in that short time frame and be able to deliver what is a safe, fun, positive experience for all the kids in all our cities and towns across the state.
Andy, hearing you talk, I'm really reminded of the power of a group like this, of all the community leaders who are out there, and the parents and the parent volunteers, that they, you and they are going to probably be the key people in terms of educating families and kids. And so it's just really powerful to hear you talk about this in that way, because I know that you take the guidance to heart as a, it's not something so much to regulate you as it is to help keep all of our communities safe. And I just think that your voices are going to be critical this summer in helping families understand and be safe. So thank you.
I want to second that. I also saw Tara asked about non-Rhode Island residents being allowed. I want to just let you know, our best advice is following the general travel guidelines for the state as a whole. Those are constantly changing, and I'm in the education and childcare space, as well as Cindy's in the park space and Caitlin in the childcare. I believe that there was some updated information on Friday about what travel restrictions are going to look like. We are asking all of you to just be consistent with what all of the state's travel guidelines are and what does that mean in terms of out-of-state people coming in. In general, my understanding is places from hotspots are going to be restricted and require a 14-day quarantine, while people from non-hotspots, there will be a little bit more lenience. But again, I would just recommend following the general travel guidance.
I have a question about DHS inspecting facilities throughout the summer. When they do come to check out your summer camp, will we be required to have documentation? Is there any documentation we should have readily available for DHS if and when they come for a visit?
Yeah, so in the screening attestation in the application, it details the documents that you're going to need to have on file. So really it's child files and attendance records with daily sign-in, sign-outs. And the child files consist of emergency contact information, the family's address, email address, and phone number in the event of emergency.
Looking just at the chat, there's a few questions about what funds might be able to be used for. I am not familiar with what the FEMA process is, so it could be the same. I think it's going to be different, but I'm just not familiar with that to be able to answer that one. The answer about supplies. In general, there have been a lot of conversations around what the state's role is, if any, in providing certain supplies for operations of businesses. In general, the funds would be allowing you guys to then go procure it. We're having, the procurement process that we have for the state is mainly for medical fields. And that is a whole lengthy process that would actually probably delay you guys getting those supplies, even if we were to utilize it. It's a several week process and you probably wouldn't have it in time. So the idea is that you guys would have to procure those on your own. Caitlin, I believe that's consistent with many of the child's care. Is that correct?
Yes. So primarily, we are actually making PPE available to childcare because of an earlier start date and given the supply chain issues. So childcare licensed providers are able to pick up certain PPE equipment. A lot of that has to do with the nature of the work for infant toddlers and preschoolers. So there's a lot of diaper changing. So there's significant shortages in gloves, which may or may not be of use to your programs, but is really these are like hot ticket items for childcare programs. Again, I think this is something that we will work through over time. My biggest commitment to you all and has been to childcare is to identify the organizations or the businesses that have these supplies available. My sense from most of you has not been an unwillingness to procure them. It's your inability to actually find them. And so we've been working on trying to find businesses that have adequate supply so that we can just refer them to you all. Again, this is something that we've been working, this is not just specific to summer camp, this is across all of the industries. So we've been really working on this. I will say that just in terms of childcare, we made masks available, but they were disposable masks. And so like they're going to be able to use them, I think, once or twice and then have to dispose of them. I think the biggest piece from what I'm understanding from groups is the need for cleaning supplies, which is not something we've made available to childcare programs. It's something that we're trying to do.
So these guidelines and recommendations, they're going to be throughout the entire summer, regardless of changes through, executive orders and things that if it, progresses through the summer, this is going to be standard for the rest of the summer, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is subject to change depending upon what we see with COVID. My hope is that we don't see a spike in COVID cases and have to return to social distancing in the way that we've seen before. But the nature of the executive order is that it anticipates emergencies and crises and that we need to adapt. So right now, the intent is to roll this out to continue seeing a reduction in COVID cases so that we can further relax the guidance and regulations. But at this time, in terms of regulations, that is what we are setting forward for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, and I should start, one of my colleagues starts any stakeholder group by saying, we have this is our best information today, and I reserve the right to change it tomorrow. So our goal and our thought is that this is our best understanding moving forward. But as you are all probably very keenly aware, our understanding of this disease is constantly evolving. And so I'm not going to 100% say that there is going to be no changes today of what's going to happen mid-July, because that is a lifetime away in our understanding of what's happening here. We will do our best to provide you with that consistent information. And we're trying, even though this might feel like very short, we still have a month before camps open. So we're trying to be as forthcoming as we can, but just want to be very transparent with that of we will inform you as things change, but our best understanding right now moving forward is that these will be the requirements as we move forward.
All right. I mean, this has all been such a great meeting for everybody to be able to ask you guys questions specifically about it. And we really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and explain this stuff further. And, you know, and you said that they can reach out to DHS via the website. There's a question that comes up after this meeting that they have. And it sounds like a lot of the questions that everybody did have, they have been answered. And I know you guys have your time is very, very valuable. So, you know, if anybody has any questions you want to ask before we can, you know, we can, you know, kind of have the meeting end within the next maybe 5 minutes or so, you know, just so everybody, I know everybody's busy right now. You know, put that out there. If you have any last questions before we end the meeting, you know, definitely ask them.
Hello, I'm Diane from East Providence again. The issue was brought up of communal water sources. So on the outdoor camps, we have, if there's a source of water, a water fountain, or something like that, or a spigot, are the individual groups allowed to get a container and transport back to their separate groups? How would that, or does everyone have to have a separate access to water?
That is a good question. Cindy, I know you've worked on this from the like Parks and Rec perspective around water fountains or bubblers and whatnot. Can you give any advice from the DEM perspective on that? You are muted, just as a heads up. So Cindy, I think you're talking, but we cannot hear you.
Yeah, duh, sorry.
No worries.
In a perfect world, it'd be great if we could all wash our hands all the time as much as we want. But say, for instance, at our equestrian facilities where there is no opportunity to do that, it has to be hand sanitizer. Am I answering the right question? Because I was a little distracted when you were asking.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, this is for water consumption, for water
consumption.
Correct, for the individual groups. Like if there is one water fountain.
Oh, okay. I said, yeah. My apologies.
All the separate groups, as long as it's done separately, and each individual group has a container to bring
Right.
back their separate group.
Right. So the thing to be aware of there, you know, focus on bottle filling rather than drinking from an actual fountain, and then sanitize any place where the fountain has been touched by hands very, very frequently between uses if possible.
Okay.
Because you just have to think about your touch points.
Correct. Okay, but it can be a shared water source. It
can be a shared water source as long as, you know, if the best situation would be a foot pump, right? But we usually don't have foot pumps. So if it's a hand operated source, then that's the place where you really have to be thinking about sanitizing between use. You know, use a wipe, use whatever it is that you need.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
I had a question off of that. Then how about lunches? Are they going to have to be distanced at luncheon time, or can they be all packed to a picnic table?
So the whole idea, oh, go for it.
No, it's okay. I would love for you to answer this. Or do you want me to? I can.
I will start and you can fill in the gap. So the whole philosophy of how we are thinking about youth programming over the summer is around this idea of stable groups. And so that we know in practice that specifically young kids are not able to stay 6 feet apart. And that's why we have talked about that if you can't stay 6 feet apart from other people consistently, then the idea is that you are only interacting with the same 15 people for the entire session/summer to the best of your ability. So given that idea, those 15 kids should be the group that is eating lunch together. They should not be interacting with other stable groups. In addition, RIDE would be remiss if I did not say, like, please still social distance as much as possible. We know in reality, your kids are going to be interacting with each other, but lunch might be a time where you can try and push a little bit more distance in between kids. But again, they should not be interacting with other groups. Caitlin, anything to add there?
No, I was just going to add from the childcare lens, we actually got this question a lot because we had a lot of organizations that brought in catering to their program and asked if they were going to be allowed to still do catering. Catering is still allowed as long as it adheres to the cleaning and sanitation guidelines. In terms of packing lunches, there's no concern. We would just ask similar, this is not in regulation, but this is in best practice. Kids should not share snacks or lunches just because you don't know the allergies or the other considerations. So even pre-COVID, I would have said, do not share lunches or snacks. Now that we're in light of COVID, I would just re-emphasize that you don't know who's packing the lunches. And so you don't want kids sharing materials. In terms of sharing space while eating, that's perfectly fine as long as they're within their stable group. And then I think Catherine touched on this, you need to clean the table in between use, which is typical with any youth program, is you want to make sure that you're sterilizing the tables after they've been eaten on.
Hopefully that answered that.
It did. Thank you.
Of course. If there aren't any last questions, I will just kind of, before Ray wraps up, just say how appreciative we are of all trying to think this through. We recognize how hard this is. And have on our side have been trying to make sure we have the things in place to help support you. But I just want to genuinely from the bottom of my heart say thank you all for thinking this through and for taking the time to do this. I know already your jobs are a lot of trying to operationalize these programs and that this does not make it easier. We are here to support you and help you, but I just want to, I feel like in these times we immediately get into the questions and often go over the thank you. And I just want to genuinely say thank you for figuring this out. We are here to partner with you as we continue to move this and are really appreciative of you trying to think through in-person programming for kids.
I just also wanted to add to the group that I echo Catherine's appreciation. The team at the state has really worked really hard to make sure that we could be in a position to deliver summer camps and to doing so thoughtfully. I would also just like to share appreciation for your patience. We do plan on having the webinar out next week, and we'll have additional documents that you all can adapt so that you can roll these out in your programs. If you have questions or would like technical assistance support, we are still working through what the workflow is that. We felt it was really important as soon as possible to just get the guidelines and the regulations up on the website. So I appreciate you all giving us a few days to think through the rollout of the additional materials. I'm going to depend on Ray to send me your contact information so that we can, as we need to roll out opportunities for ongoing TA and webinars. I love hearing all of the questions and feedback regarding the forms and the guidelines. Just sitting here as a parent, I feel really assured that all of you are putting such deep thought into your plans for delivering summer programming. I also hear your concern about not being able to serve as many kids, and this is more anecdotal than it is data driven, but I want to tell you that by the end of the week, we're going to be preparing some data for the governor on the number of childcare programs that are reopening and what their capacity to serve is under the new regulations. And I would have to say that it's a combination of, programs are not able to serve as many kids because of COVID, but also the demand is not as high as it once was pre-COVID. So families are really orienting to the new regulations and the new standards. There's a combination of fear, but also just uncertainty about what it means to send your child to programming. And so I want to encourage all of you to think about your messaging to families to make sure that they feel comfortable sending their children. I know in just hearing your thoughtful questions that you're already thinking about that, but your concerns around capacity, I just want to reassure you that it does appear to be dual, right? We are seeing lowered capacity numbers, but we're also seeing lower demand. I hope for that to pick up in the coming weeks, but it does seem to suggest that we will not have as much demand to serve as many kids as we have in previous years. And so just thinking through what that means for operations.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You guys have been awesome with this meeting, and then also just with formulating all the stuff. And I know everybody here appreciates all the work that you and your teams have put into coming up with recommendations and guidelines for us to continue doing our youth programs. And we're trying to, with the RIRPA, we're trying to make sure that we support you guys in the state as much as we can and get out this information to you. And I will send out all the information that I get, and I will send Caitlin all your email addresses so we can all stay in contact, because this is what this organization is all about. It's about networking, keeping in contact during these tough times that nobody could have anticipated. And I'm happy to be able to help network between everybody here. So, thank you everybody for being part of the meeting, and thank you, Catherine and Caitlin and Cynthia, for being part of the meeting as well, and helping us kind of navigate this crazy time that we're dealing with right now. So, yep, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting here just because I know everybody's super busy, and we'll be in contact, and we'll all get through this together.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, everybody.
No problem.
Thanks.